Ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Number one, let's look into the definition of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is an evaluation of other cultures according to preconceptions originating in the standards and customs of one's own culture. Point number one. Okay, a popular example of ethnocentrism is to think of the utensils different cultures prefer to use. Some cultures prefer to use forks, spoons, and knives to eat, and may have the belief that it is weird or incorrect that some cultures traditionally use chopsticks to eat with, or their hands. Ethnocentrism is the belief that your culture is natural and correct while other people's cultures are incorrect and unnatural or inferior. Explanation. Ethnocentric, on the other hand, those kind of people think the way they do things is the way things should be done, and every other culture's way of doing things is unsavory or undesirable. This can start off to a prejudice or racism type thing. Continual of explanation. Ethnocentrism can be a contributing factor to what I've just mentioned and xenophobia. What it boils down to is considering yourself and your culture to be the best compared to other cultures. That is so not cool. A little interlude here, a side note, if you will. This is unfortunately what I get from some of my in-laws. Their way or the highway. My way is the sad way, according to them. Okay, back on track using some examples. Number one, thinking you don't have an accent. Hello. Number two, expecting others to speak English or their language. Number three, judging other countries and the way they dress. Number four, judging other countries and the way they eat or kinds of food. Number five, assimilationism. None of this factors into good behavioral ways of getting along with one of another. You may run into this with family members, but you have to start with each other and stay headstrong. Remember, it's not your significant other's fault because of the way their siblings or family feels about you or vice versa. Which leads me into the next point, cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that a person's belief and practices should be understood based on that person's own culture. Proponents of cultural. I love this point. It refers to not judging a culture to our own standards of what is right or wrong, strange or normal. Instead, we should try to understand cultural practices of other groups in its own cultural context. Cultural relativist. Uphold that cultures differ fundamentally from one another, and so do the moral frameworks that structure relations within different societies. So a good example Explains why certain cultures eat different foods at different meals. For example, traditionally, breakfast in the US is markedly different from breakfast in Japan or Colombia or Guatemala and so forth. And yet another example, I grew up Baptist/Pentecost. He grew up Catholic. That did not stop me from learning and studying his form of religion. Then he listened to mine and went to my church as well. And yet another interlude, if you will. He was convicted through his heart and converted to my belief. Therefore brings us to today. He is a missions evangelist, so he can go there and teach what he's learned here and come back here and teach us what they need and understand there. The main goal here is the ability to understand a culture on its own terms. We don't need to make judgments using standards of our own culture, yet instead promote the other culture, practice the other culture, understand the other culture. That is not typically part of one's own culture, of course. What I just said to you in the last slide is the major ingredient for fellowship with one another, no matter the diversity. And that is how my husband and I have made it. Being equally yoked in hunger for each other's culture, let alone for each other, which is a key element. Just remember, nothing's ever perfect. You'll have your ups and downs with other family members possibly. Just stay level-headed and always agree to disagree. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Keep watching. There's one more video coming up.